All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. This show is a series that has been coming to you from DCTV since 2015 in a weekly program called the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's program is pre-recorded and is called Why Don't People Think? Thank you to DCTV and Carmen Stanley, Program Director, to Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and to Cruchet Starnes on audio and teleprompter. I want to start out with a conversation about why we can't seem to get things straight. I told you about a conversation I had last week with a former staff member of the World Bank. She wanted me to join her in a lawsuit. I told her the courts are all fake and the judges are all working for the banking cartel, and that I don't accept the jurisdiction of these fake courts. Our conversation only went downhill from there. Why? Because this person is hypnotized by scalar weaponry and she couldn't hear me. I tried to reason with her, but the conversation never made any sense. Most people, about 80% of them, are sensitive to scalar technology. It's a waste of time to talk to them because they just can't think. I tried one more time to get through to her. I asked whether any of her friends might see how this woman was unable to reason. Now I'm going to change the subject. I'm going to talk about how we're all in this together. We're working to make ourselves loose from the group hypnosis that's caused by scalar military weapons. Two weeks ago, I made a home video about Jerusalem. The main point was that the Rothschilds are not at the center of the central banks. The black nobility is. 3 of the comments on the video about Jerusalem ignored what I told them about the black nobility hiding behind the Rothschilds. You could see the scalar military weaponry at work. I'm now giving you 2 of my responses to the video about Jerusalem. The first comment was from Yoshka Mamzer Balaam Ben Stada. The Rothschild family are Zionists. Rothschild family owns the central banks of every country in the world but a few. That's Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. Could it be that's why we're at war with them? I'll let you decide. You know who used to have their own central banks as well as outside the Rothschild control. Libya and Iraq. Oh, but we decided to murder them and give their gold to the Rothschild family. Now, this is my response. YouTube erased my first 2 replies. You have not understood. The Rothschilds are lower-ranking knights of the Garter. The black nobility, who own the central banks, are hiding behind the Rothschilds. The enemy hides behind authentic Judaism and when attacked will deceptively claim anti-Semitism and hate crimes at work. Members of the enemy are not Jews in any way. They don't have a religious or humanitarian bone in their bodies, only a lower order predator instinct. And then I wrote to John B. another comment. It's a shame that I can't seem to get through to you. 3 others have made the same mistake. The real culprits are the black nobility, and they're blaming the Zionists. Please try to educate yourself about the black nobility. And John B. had written, I believe you're talking about Jewish Zionist organized crime and needs to be called out by regular Jews. The Orthodox Jews have called out the Zionist Jews. However, Karen, as you're a Jewess and formerly an employee of the World Bank, you may know more about what's been going on than anyone else. The bankers are predominantly Jewish, as I can spot a few, if not by name, then by facial features, and have now inherited the monetary system as a fraudulent scheme to benefit themselves. At the time of Christ, they were called money changers, that then led to money lenders, where usury flourished, whereby the Jews controlled the creation of money making, more or less. If all the debts of America were paid off, then there would be no money left in circulation. Money is created out of debt. Now, I'm going to give you some of the talking points for the video on Jerusalem. The point that we are interconnected, and that's so a critical mass is able to think for themselves and work ourselves loose from the bankers' lies. I've been fighting the scalar weaponry. The struggle to remain loose from the black nobility is very tiring, but we're managing. I'm now going to give you some of the talking points on the video on Jerusalem. Although it was a difficult passage, we all came through. There's no teleprompter for the video I shot at home at the end of October, right after I got out of the hospital. I prepared talking notes instead. I began with a tweet about the reason I missed 2 segments at the end of October. The rest of the tweet gave you some background on the global currency reset and the centuries of corruption that's coming to an end. I'm going to end with a tweet describing one of the thorniest problems that's distracting us from cleaning up the corruption in the world's money. On May 21st, 2017, I met with agents of the Banking Cartel to ask them to concede. None of them would acknowledge that they were agents. However, it was very satisfying to confront them face to face. One of these people had been involved when an Israeli agent gave me a concussion with a karate chop on my neck beneath my chin. And then I'm showing you something that I tweeted that will give you an idea who I was meeting with. And I also wanted to remind you that you missed my video on Barry Kamish that I made on August 27, 2016. And there's a comment 1 year after Barry Kamish's death on the video that I made about Barry Kamish. Quote, "We are now almost a year later, and over the last few days, Barry's information has been corroborated in Israeli media. This is a huge story with severe implications for many. If you speak Hebrew, Google will tell you about Yemenite children for the week of June 21, 2017. As we speak, there's a major protest happening in one of the main squares in Jerusalem about this exact issue. There could be tens of thousands of people participating. I'm beyond horrified, as any human being should be. I know that for most people, Barry Camish's information seems like made-up nonsense, meshuggah. The events of the last few days in Israel simply confirm without a doubt that Barry's information was 100% true. It's time to look at his work seriously and examine everything he came up with. Rest in peace, Barry Camish, a courageous fighter for truth. And if you can stop scrolling, I'll explain what Barry Camish had talked about. What Barry Camish discovered was that about 5,000 Yemeni babies were shipped to the United States. This was in the beginning of the 1950s. And the reason that they did that, that was a deal that was engineered by Yitzhak Rabin. And in return for sending these Yemeni babies to the United States, that was when Israel got its nuclear program in return. And what happened to the Yemeni babies? Well, there were about 500 of them that were adopted, and the rest of them were experimented on because the United States wanted to find out what happened to human beings when they were exposed to radiation. And these babies died ghastly deaths. Ghastly deaths. Now, let's change the subject again. You want to scroll down further? What is the black nobility and why is it important? The black nobility are the oligarchic families of Venice and Genoa. Genoa, that's Italian Genova, is a historical port city in northern Italy, the capital of the region of, and then that's not in the teleprompter, I think it's Liguria, but I'm not sure. The black nobility were descended from ancient Egyptian pharaonic bloodline families. Ancient Egyptians called themselves Kemet, meaning black. In the 12th century, these families held the privileged trading rights, monopolies. The first of 3 crusades from 1063 to 1123 established the power of the Venetian black nobility and solidified the power of the wealthy ruling class. The black nobility aristocracy achieved complete control over Venice in 1171 when the appointment of the Doge, or chief magistrate, was transferred to what was known as the Great Council, which consisted of members of the council. Around 1,400 European power centers coalesced into 2 camps, the Ghibellines, who supported the Emperor's Hohenstaufen family, and the Guelphs from Guelph, the German prince who competed with Frederick for control of the Holy Roman Empire. The Guelphs and Ghibellines, and the English pronunciation I've given you, they were factions supporting the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor, respectively, in central and northern Italy. During the 12th and 13th centuries, the split between these 2 parties was a particularly important aspect of the internal policy of the Italian city-states. The House of Windsor descended from the Guelphs. In an earlier segment on DCTV, I mentioned that Queen Elizabeth II is an illegitimate descendant of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was actually sired by Jacob, James de Rothschild. And James was stationed in Paris and the youngest of 5 brothers from the old Amschel Rothschild. and he was the biological father of Queen Victoria. And you can see in the teleprompter the remarkable resemblance between James and her and his daughter. Queen Victoria had a legitimate firstborn son who was exiled to Portugal. Queen Victoria married King George V of Hanover when she was 14, and she never divorced him. Victoria's son Edward VII, that's Elizabeth II's great-grandfather, was illegitimate. I covered Queen Elizabeth II's family feud with the other contender for the throne of England in an earlier episode of the DCTV series. Venice has remained in the hands of the Venetian black nobility ever since, but the power and influence of the Venetian black nobility extends far beyond its borders, and it's still felt in every corner of the globe. In 1204, the oligarchic families parceled out feudal enclaves to their members, and this group forms the center of the head of the snake, where the government became a closed corporation of the leading black nobility families. The black nobility also earned its title through dirty tricks, so when the population revolted against the monopolies in government, the leaders of the uprising were quickly seized and brutally hanged. They used secret assassinations, murder, the bankrupting of opposing citizens or companies, kidnapping, and rape. The list of the black nobility, that's the House of Guelph, that's Britain, the House of Wettin, that's Belgium, the House of Liechtenstein, that's Liechtenstein, the House of Oldenburg, that's Denmark, the House of Hohenzollern, that's Germany, the House of Hanover, that's also Germany, the House of Bourbon, that's France, the House of Orange, that's the Netherlands, the House of Grimaldi, that's Monaco, the House of Wittelsbach, that's Germany, the House of Braganza, that's Portugal, the House of Nassau, that's Luxembourg, the House of Habsburg, that's Austria, the House of Savoy, that's Italy, the House of Karađorđević, that's Yugoslavia, the House of Württemberg, that's Germany, and the House of Zogo, that's Albania. Today, the Guelphs rule by dominating the raw materials market, and for years, they've fixed the price of gold, which they don't produce and they do not own. The Global Debt Facility owns the world's gold. The House of Windsor also controls the price of copper, zinc, lead, and tin. It's no accident that the principal commodity exchanges are located in London. Black nobility families run British Petroleum, Oppenheimer, Lonrho, Philbro, and others. Another black nobility family are the Grosvenors in England. For centuries, this family lived, as most of the European royal families, on ground rent. Today, the family owns at least 300 acres of land in the center of London. The land is never sold, but leased on a 39-year leasehold agreement, the ground rent of the Middle Ages. Grosvenor Square, in which the American Embassy is located, belongs to the Grosvenor family, as does Eaton Square. In Eaton Square, apartments are rented out at £25,000 a month, and that doesn't include maintenance costs. This will give you some idea of the immense wealth the black nobility families garner from ground rents, and why families like the Windsors are not at all interested in industrial. This is the only reason why these noble families are fighting population growth. Prince Philip and Prince Charles are the most visible symbols of these movements, and both have often spoken with the utmost callousness about the need to rid the world of unwanted people. Black nobility are connected to the Committee of 300, the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the Bilderbergers, the UN, the Round Table, all originate from the Committee of 300 and therefore from the European black nobility. These families and their descendants today are the ones who are corrupting the world's money system. These are the ones who are collecting and keeping our taxes, all of them. These persons are the ones who own all of our media and are lying to us, and who have been lying to us for centuries about our history. These are the ones who are commanding the world's intelligence agencies. These families are the ones who are registering the births of our children and turning our innocent babes into companies with names in all capital letters. These families are the ones who have been telling the puppet corrupt governments what evil policies to carry out and to simply ignore whatever the people in the countries may want. These families are the ones who instruct the corrupt administrative judges what to decide in the administrative hearings these corrupt judges pretend to preside over. These families are the ones who have suspended the United States Constitution of 1789. Now, I'm going to speak extemporaneously because I've run out of all of the teleprompters. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about in Jerusalem is Auschwitz. Auschwitz was, it wasn't a death camp. It was a place where the Germans were manufacturing the uranium that was used in the atomic bomb. And I also wanted to talk to you about the 100-monkey effect. This is something which tells you when a number of people believe something, it becomes manifest. It was something that we discovered in Japan when monkeys were washing sweet potatoes in the ocean. And for a while, the monkeys were just learning from each other. But once you reached critical mass, all of a sudden, all the monkeys of that group were all on islands and whatnot. They were all washing sweet potatoes. What this tells us is that there's something called a collective unconscious. That means that when enough people understand something, we all do. And what that means, of course, is that if enough people, the 100-monkey effect, understand that the world's money system is corrupt, and that is the case, we all will eventually. That's a very hopeful mechanism. When are we going to all of us understand this? Well, we've reached critical mass, so that means that it's manifest. But I guess we need to do some more publicity. I don't know what to call it. It's not really publicity because, as you know, the military weapons, it's like a tug of war. The scalar weaponry is fighting to keep us from realizing things. But I can tell you, they can't hold us back. Enough of us understand this, that it's not going to continue. One of the other things that that seems to to have happened is that once we reached critical mass, there was a group of healers who saw that that there was a big commotion. So there's been a very physical manifestation of how we're all working together in a different paradigm. I'm not sure exactly how much time it's going to take and why it's taking so long. I do have a suspicion about this, and that's that if all of us were to all of a sudden understand that we've inherited the global debt facility and the wealth of the world, without actually building up the means to control this movement, it would just, we would lose it quickly. The reality is that the world's elites and dishonest bankers have no claim over the world's wealth. The Postal Union has refused to admit the bankers are bankrupt. The militaries seem to know the reality that the banking cartel has lost. And you can see some of the comments in the video I produced at home that there are people who are, we're all working together, and it's a very warm relationship. So I'm very happy about that. Our relationship among the critical mass of people who can reason despite scalar weaponry matters.